You know, Chauncey, there's something about you. You don't play games with words to protect yourself.
Had no brains at all. Stuffed with rice pudding between the ears.
He's very, very sexy. But I think he's brilliant.
I raised that boy.
It's always somewhat surprising to find men like yourself working so intimately with the president and yet somehow managing to remain relatively unknown. Yes, it is surprising.
And look at him now.
I can't write.
Well, I heard he speaks 8 languages.
I can't read. I like to watch TV. I understand.
How much steel are you using these days, Todd?
Yes, another look at Mark Carney, who could be Canada's next Prime Minister. When we come back, we'll look at Mark Carney a little bit more in polling. Before we look at Justin Trudeau's primal fear of Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Let's stand on guard.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist.
Yes, please like this broadcast and do it now if you can, so we can beat the YouTube censorship, which is quite intense on shows like this that deal with policies. And should we be surprised? Well, maybe not. But interesting line here. Reports that China is interfering with Chrystia Freeland's leadership campaign. Now, why would China want Mark Carney to be the next leader of the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada? Even more than Chrystia Freeland. Well, Mark Carney is so connected. He's such an insider with the globalist community, with the World Economic Forum, with people like Klaus Schwab. Yes, and even people who were involved in some very nefarious activities like Jeffrey Epstein. He was plugged into Jeffrey Epstein's world. Hasn't adequately answered those questions. But China would love to see Mark Carney as the next Prime Minister of Canada because he is very malleable. Even more so, perhaps, than Justin Trudeau, if that's possible. Want to have a look at this poll again that we talked about yesterday, because it's quite fascinating. The one that said 40%, yes, count it, 40%. We did our own poll yesterday about who do you trust to negotiate with Donald Trump. Look at the difference here. On X, we had over 15,000 responses right now. I can't keep up with them. 94% trust Pierre Poilievre. And the YouTube poll was 99% trust Pierre Poilievre. Now, I did not include Maxime Bernier on the question because it's unlikely Maxime Bernier is going to be in a position to negotiate with Donald Trump. I'm sure we'd all love to see that, but that's not going to be the case. It's going to be Pierre Poilievre on the conservative side. This poll strikes me as odd. Not mine, but the poll from Nanos. Why? Because it was commissioned by CTV News and the Globe and Mail. Yes, I know they're with the same media company and they share news all the time. But have a look at this. Why would you just include Mark Carney and two Liberal leadership candidates along with Pierre Poilievre? Why not include Jagmeet Singh? I mean, as ludicrous as that might be, can you imagine Jagmeet Singh negotiating with Donald Trump? No, I can't. Why didn't they include Maxime Bernier on their poll? because it's very unlikely that Karina Gould is ever going to negotiate with Donald Trump either. But have a look at the breakdown here. Province-wide, region-wise. Despite the fact that Pierre Poilievre opens all of his speeches in French, that he speaks first in French no matter where he is in Canada, even in hugely dominant Anglophone centers like Vancouver, Calgary, or Toronto, even Halifax, he will talk for 10 minutes in French before speaking a word of English. When he rises in the House of Commons for question period, it's once again, the first 3 questions are en français. I don't know why he thinks he has to do this, but despite doing this, Pierre Poilievre is appraised to be the lowest in Quebec, where he received 14.9%, thought he was the best qualified to negotiate. Now, it's not clear to me what they're trying to say in this poll, because there's no definition of qualified. They don't really say what makes Mark Carney the better candidate. But Mark Carney scored very high in this, 40%. And I tend to believe that the question wasn't so much as cooked, as this is a response to the mass media, the mainstream media's constant promotion of Mark Carney as the candidate of the hour. This is clearly a consequence of the mainstream media's promotion of Mark Carney, the propaganda they put out about him being so knowledgeable about economics and the Canadian economy. Of course, as that little piece at the beginning, which I just love, demonstrates, Mark Carney hasn't got a clue about economics. This is the guy who thinks we don't use steel anymore in our economy. This is the guy who thinks we can punish corporations for so-called pollution, meaning carbon, and that they're just going to take it without either giving it back to the Canadian consumer or just saying, to hell with you, Mark Carney in Canada, we're getting out of your country. We're going to a country where there is no carbon tax, where we're not going to be punished for productivity. Mark Carney is a recipe for absolute disaster, and I keep saying that. Now, what was Justin Trudeau up to yesterday? Well, Justin Trudeau was up to his usual. And let's have a look at this, because this is quite fascinating. I didn't kind of put this back at the beginning. Here we go.
Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing.
We'll play that again.
Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing.
Okay, so contrary to what Justin Trudeau has said publicly in the past, he really does believe that Donald Trump wants to annex, take over, invade, whatever you want to call it, Canada. And that's what he tells people privately. You remember when he came back from Mar-a-Lago, excuse me. Say Lego. Dominic LeBlanc was asked, do you think Donald Trump really likes Justin Trudeau? Dominic LeBlanc replied, oh, yes, he has a lot of affection for Justin Trudeau. Yeah. Justin Trudeau was asked whether he thought Trump was serious about actually making Canada the 51st state. Justin Trudeau said, of course not. It's just Justin. He's just having some fun with us. Justin Trudeau has one story for the public and another one that he tells people privately. Now, I'm beginning to wonder whether or not this so-called hot mic incident was in fact engineered. Now, why do I say that? Who broke the story yesterday? Have you asked yourself that question? Who broke this story? Yes, the Toronto Star. This is where the Liberal Party traditionally goes to break stories that it wants to look like it didn't intend to have the story broken, that it was an accident. But it really does want the news to be reported in a way that looks like, whoops, that was a mistake, that was an accident. But the Toronto Star can be relied upon to do the bidding of the Liberal Party and to release the story in a way that is as least offensive to the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau as possible. And that's precisely what they did with this so-called hot mic. No, I don't buy for a minute now that this was an accident, that Justin Trudeau didn't mean for this to be promoted or publicized or printed or posted. That's exactly what he meant to happen. Let's listen to Justin Trudeau before the hot mic incident. And I'll play as little of this as possible because Justin Trudeau is just looking so happy, so positive about the future. And I'm saying, what the hell does he know that you and I don't?
I think the strategic reflection we have to have right now is that we are in a moment that we have to meet for Canadians to see not just how we get through this particular challenge over the next 30 days or few months, but how we get through and thrive and grow stronger over the next 4 years and into what may be a more challenging long-term political situation with the United States. How do we make sure we are resilient as an economy? And for me, there's 3 areas we need to think about: Canada, the United States, and international. First of all, on Canada, it's about time we had genuine free trade within Canada.
All right, he gets a little round of applause.
Now, there's a lot of talk about diversification. We'll get to that as well. But let's face some facts here. We are Canada. Geography means we're always going to both benefit and be challenged by trade with the United States. It's always going to be a big chunk of our economy. Can we be deliberate and strategic about where we're creating deeper partnerships that make sense, where we're looking at whether it's critical minerals that are going to be so essential for the future and that international suppliers are a little more unreliable on, certain countries are unreliable on, whether it's moving forward on energy and deepening our energy links in a positive way that actually solidifies those ties and makes them less vulnerable to the vagaries of politics. Can we be thoughtful and deliberate about the kinds of partnerships that enhance and create true win-wins, but also give us a little more protection against political rhetoric in the United States?
Political rhetoric in the United States. Key phrase. He's telling the crowd that it's rhetoric that means nothing. Later that same day, he told the insiders, the business leaders, that he doesn't think it's rhetoric. He thinks it's facts. And he engineered this to look like this is such highly important information that I can't share it with the public. I can't share it when the media is there. I've got to share it with the insiders like me. But I want the public to know that I'm really serious about what I believe here. So this is typical liberal communication strategy. And as far as I'm concerned, this is an example of how Justin Trudeau plays word games, plays mind games, and uses the typical word salad to describe things. He went on in that same manner for at least 10 minutes, saying absolutely nothing. Now, the same day, Michael Barrett, who's been on this show, talking about he's done some great work on the Green Slush Fund. That's what we had him on the show for, and I'd like to get him on again to talk about bringing back Parliament. But bizarre news conference yesterday in Parliament Hill with Michael Barrett, the Ontario Conservative MP, talking about the fact that the House of Commons is still prorogued, and it shouldn't be. Now, if you were waiting to watch this news conference, you had to wait 25 minutes until Michael Barrett finally emerged to begin the news conference. 25 minutes. In that time period, we had some communications lackey come out, test the microphone, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Finally, Michael Barrett emerged. And it's like he wasn't quite sure what the message should be. And wait till we get to the questions and answers. But here's what he had to say. Because largely, I'm 100% agree with what he said. He just doesn't look like he's 100% confident in saying it.
Good afternoon. This morning we saw Prime Minister Justin Trudeau go to Toronto and make a speech that was accompanied by no commitment for action, but he was joined by a room full of insiders and former politicians and politicians. And when he was done making his speech, without taking any questions from the media, he kicked them all out of the room and shut the doors. Now, we agree with Justin Trudeau on one thing, and that's that there should be a meeting happening and that the Prime Minister should be there. But that meeting should be here in Ottawa, and it should be right here in the House of Commons with the 338 members of Parliament who were elected to address the issues that our nation is facing. And what issues could be more important than what is being addressed in the Trudeau performance in Toronto today? The threat of 25% tariffs, the need to put Canada first, to secure our border for Canadians, to break down interprovincial trade barriers, to make sure that we can pass a bring-it-home tax cut.
Okay, I'll be right back with Michael Barrett, but can you tell me what a bring-it-home tax cut means? Because apparently it's no longer axe the tax, meaning the carbon tax, because that has sort of been hijacked to some degree by the Liberals and the Liberal leadership candidates. But let's stop talking in slogans about bring-it-home tax cut. I'd like to know what that is. Sounds like a good idea.
For Canadians. That's supposed to happen here in Parliament. Debated on the floor of the House of Commons, studied in the committee rooms in this very building. But the Liberals have decided to put party ahead of country. And while Justin Trudeau performs in Toronto, the rest of the Liberals are lined up behind their leadership hopefuls like Carbon Tax Carney and Carbon Tax Christia, who have yet to pronounce on if they share Mr. Trudeau's view that Parliament isn't important. But look, the absence of them having said it underscores that we know that they don't see the value in putting country before party. And it's very simple. The steps laid out, the common sense plan laid out by Pierre Poilievre, to be prepared in the eventuality that tariffs.
Now, I don't want to take any credit for this, but for the last 3 weeks, I have been saying, and I privately passed this on, that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party needs to be talking about not just Canada first, but that they're not the ones who aren't putting Canada first. They're not the ones who are putting party first. It's the Liberals. It's the Trudeau government that's putting their party first above Canada by having their little leadership campaign while Canada is still in limbo about tariffs that will be catastrophic and put us in a Great Depression with a capital G and a capital D. Good move. I'm glad they're finally telling the right message here, owning this issue of Canada first. They had to get back to that. Stop the constant carbon tax Carney, and get on to the fact that this is a party, this is a leader ready to lead Canada.
Are levied to strengthen our economy by breaking down those interprovincial trade barriers that the Liberals have failed to address over their 9 years, and to make sure that we can make work pay again, to deliver a meaningful, bring-it-home tax cut.
There it is again.
And to repeal the damaging policies of the Liberal government that have stopped the development of pipelines, that have stopped the exporting of our natural resources that would help deliver powerful paychecks for Canadians and would help diversify the trade that we're able to do as a country. Look, it's an important time in our country, and the questions that need to be put to Mr. Trudeau can't today because he's gone into hiding behind a locked door. They aren't being put to Mr. Carney because he's in hiding as well. And the last time he was asked if Parliament should be sitting, he ran away. And Ms. Freeland seems equally unconcerned. This is a democracy. Canadians expect that their views and their voices will be heard here in Parliament. And today we're renewing our call for Parliament to be recalled because it should be sitting. Parliament was scheduled to be sitting today. It should be our second week in our winter session, but it was shuttered. These doors were locked by Justin Trudeau when the Liberals decided to put party ahead of country. So let's get back to work. Let's recall Parliament so that we can debate the issues, pass legislation that is going to deliver real action for Canadians where we can put Canada first. Thank you.
Is Donald Trump coming after Canada's critical minerals? Do you agree with the hot mic comments made by Prime Minister Trudeau earlier today, suggesting that we should take Donald Trump's threat of Canada becoming the 51st state seriously and implying that Trump wants to control Canada's critical minerals?
Dominic LeBlanc, the finance minister, and Justin Trudeau both told Canadians, just down the hall from here actually, that the comments by President Trump were made in jest and were not to be taken seriously. So we've been told for the last several months that these comments weren't to be believed. So now we find ourselves in a situation where they're saying that a sudden crisis has emerged with respect to these comments that for months they've said weren't to be taken seriously.
Now, I would have loved to hear an answer to that question. Do you believe Donald Trump is serious? He never answers that question. He's also asked, do you agree with the Supreme Court challenge to stop the prorogation of Parliament? Do you agree that this was a good thing? He can't say, yes, I agree with that. Instead, he just says the Conservatives believe the prorogation was unnecessary and we need to get back to party. So, yes, the answer really was, yes, you do agree with the Supreme Court challenge, which will, by the way, next week, we will find out whether the Supreme Court agrees that Trudeau's prorogation of Parliament, the suspension of Parliament, was unconstitutional, was unlawful, was illegal, was improper, all of these things. So we could be right back where we were before Trudeau prorogued things in January. That's where I hope we are, because we need an election. Now, want to move on to where does this leave the Conservative Party right now? I'd say in a very good position. Canada First rally with Pierre Poilievre in Ottawa, that's next Friday. I will be there. In fact, I'll be broadcasting at least part of it live. I'm trying to get an interview with Pierre Poilievre. I will certainly be asking him questions from the floor, but like a lot of people on YouTube, I'm going to be there as a reporter. I'm not going to use other people's clips from the event. I'm going to be there. And I think this is going to be a very exciting event. Now, why isn't Pierre Poilievre telling us now what the change in strategy, what this major rebranding of conservative campaign strategy is? He should be telling us now, and then emphasizing it, reiterating it next Friday at this rally in downtown Ottawa at the Rogers Theater. If you, that's where the Canada, it's where the Canada Strong and Free event is, by the way. And I encourage you to go if you're listening. Find out where Pierre Poilievre's taking the Conservative Party can. Find out what this rebranding is. Find out what he wants to do. Don't take my word for it. Certainly don't take the words of the CBC reporters who will be there, or the CTV News reporters. Find out for yourself. Be there. We need to get Parliament back in session as soon as possible. Now, it's interesting as well. Dominic LeBlanc is changing.
Significant spending in a bunch of areas has to be ratcheted down. My own view is things as simple as the growth of government need to be looked at. Our government is very proud of the fall economic statement that we made public yesterday. I think we have to look at taxation policy. We have accumulated a certain amount of snow in front of the plow over the last number of years that make us uncompetitive with the United States, but also speak to confidence in things as important as our currency.
Now, did Dominic LeBlanc just have a mind shift there? He would never have said that 2 months ago. He would never have said Canada's spending too much and taxing too much. Canada's become a tax and spend economy. Maybe he'll be punished for saying so. Now, I want to get back. If you missed this at the very beginning, this is our poll. This is whether or not, and I encourage you, go to X, go to YouTube, and vote in this poll. Whether you think, who do you trust to negotiate with Donald Trump? For those of you who wished I had to put Maxime Bernier on that list, once again, I apologize, but I tried to put people who were most likely were going to be actually negotiating with Donald Trump. Want to show you this as well, and here we'll watch.
Well, look, the Conservatives not shied away from trying to position Mark Carney. I mean, his track record speaks for itself. He's been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. He's supported a carbon tax in his various iterations all through it. And so when people say, "Oh, the Conservatives are panicking and this is a new approach," well, they haven't been paying attention because they've been going after and trying to position Mark Carney for a number of years. And you're right, the focus has been largely on Carney, partially in response to what the polls say about the Liberal leadership. But I think the Conservatives and I think Pierre Poilievre would love to take on Mark Carney in the next election and go after him, go after his previous record. He claims to be an outsider, but this guy is getting confidential briefings from the cabinet. What about his ethics? He says he's, divested himself from a number of things, but he's still, we haven't seen anything from the ethics commissioner. We haven't seen any details about it. So I think, frankly, Mr. Poilievre relishes a chance to take on Mr. Carney after the Liberal leadership has come to an end.
Well, this is an old acquaintance of mine, Gary Keller. He was one of those staffers on Parliament Hill who has gone to that great communications firm in the sky. I don't mean he's passed on. He's gone from Parliament Hill staffer to one of these communication groups, one of these PR groups in Ottawa where they all end up. But he's talking quite logically here. And this is why is Mark Carney getting confidential, secret, maybe top secret briefings when he's not even a member of parliament? He has not yet been elected as the leader of the Liberal Party. He's not prime minister. He's acting like he is. But what kind of a country have we got?
He's not elected and doesn't hold office, so I don't know if he has to comply with the ethics commissioner. I don't believe he would have to unless he actually wins the leadership race. But I mean, that will be something he has to do.
Look at his track record. He was the chairman of Brookfield, International. He is a private citizen. He is not elected to anything, and he is getting confidential briefings from the government of Canada on the trade tariffs. Is Chrystia Freeland getting that? Is Ruby Dahl getting that? Or Frank Bayless? I highly doubt it. So there are questions, I think, that have to be raised about the ethics of a private citizen who's never been elected to anything getting this type of access.
Sure.
And it's clear like Liberals, PMO and others seem to be in the bag for Mr. Carney.
Well, I wasn't dismissing your concerns about his financial holdings. I was just explaining to the audience that because he's not elected, there's no compliance he has to have with the ethics commissioner.
You see how the CBC always justifies what the Liberal Party does? Well, but there's nothing improper here. It's not illegal. He doesn't have to comply with anything because he's not an MP. The CBC is always reluctant to question anything the Trudeau government does ethically or morally or even legally. Now, in the time we have left, this really struck me as humongous. This is the Canadian Union of Public Employees. Doug Ford has been spending a lot of time with these people, sucking up to the unions in Ontario because he needs every vote to win another term of office. You watch, Doug Ford will be telling you very shortly that this will be his last election. He doesn't intend to run again. This will be his last kick at the can. But here he is hanging out with the unions because Doug Ford will hang out with anybody who he thinks will help him win this next election. And he'll promise anything. What do you think CUPE is promising now? CUPE wants to nationalize any corporation or industry that threatens to leave Canada. Now, do you think that's going to happen? I doubt it. There's never been an instance of this in Canadian history. This is the sort of thing that happens in third world dictatorships. But do you think for a minute anything is impossible today with Doug Ford being all over the map? With Mark Carney would probably love this idea, but this is what's called brazen communism. When you nationalize industries because they no longer want to be in your country, it's called communism. And it's a phenomena that has usually, as I said, been restricted to third world tin pot dictatorships. But does Doug Ford agree with this? He won't say he doesn't because he wants the support of CUPE. Now that is just incredible. And we go back to that slide. Mark Carney loves communist China probably just as much as Justin Trudeau loved communist China. And that's why communist China wants Mark Carney to win. There's no question about that. So please have a look at our store, and I'll be back with some concluding remarks. Yes, and go to this rally if you have the opportunity, if you're in a position to go. I'm not in the pocket of the Conservative Party of Canada or Pierre Poilievre, but I think we need to know what alternative we have to Mark Carney. This man is dangerous. He's incompetent. He's inept. He's no whiz kid. And that's how they... This is a man who's failed economically in his tasks. He's being held up by the mainstream media as a hero, as a savior, and nothing could be further from the truth. So we need to find out where the Conservative Party is going with their messaging and whether it's something that will keep the Liberals from getting and staying in power. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. Really, thank you for watching today. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe, resubscribe if you have to. Our subscriptions have been pitiful lately. Maybe I have been. I don't know. But I do my best to give you all the news you need to know. At least most of it. And let's continue to resolve to resist as we fight a Liberal government that is always on the cusp of becoming more tyrannical and more dictatorial. Thanks for watching today, folks. I'll be back again tomorrow. Enjoy your Saturday. Have a great day.